On July 1, 1916, during the Battle of the Somme, 19,240 British soldiers were killed before dinner. That number is real. It is not exaggerated. It is not dramatic storytelling. It is the verified death toll for a single morning, the bloodiest day in the history of the British Army. And what makes it even worse is this: every man who survived that morning was ordered to go back the next day. That is where your story begins. This is not the heroic version of war shown in school books, not the glorious version painted in patriotic speeches, not the clean uniforms, the proud marches, or the waving flags. This is the reality of your first 24 hours in a trench on the Western Front, where the ground is made of mud, the air smells like rot, and your life expectancy depends on luck more than courage. You are not arriving as a hero. You are arriving as a replacement, one more body sent to fill the gap left by another. No one knows your name, no one expects you to survive, and statistically, you now have about a 64% chance of being killed or wounded before this war ends. Before you even see the front line, the odds are already against you. The journey to the war is miserable from the very beginning. You cross the English Channel, most likely leaving from Southampton and landing at Boulogne-sur-Mer. And from there, you are sent to a giant military camp at Etaples. This is where thousands of new soldiers wait before being moved to the trenches. At its peak, more than 100,000 men were stationed there. Think about that, an entire city of soldiers. And inside that camp were 16 hospitals with over 20,000 beds. The army had prepared tens of thousands of hospital beds before you had even reached the battlefield. That tells you exactly what they expect will happen to you. The poet Wilfred Owen saw men arriving there. He described the faces around him not as frightened, but as empty, not terror, something beyond terror. He wrote that the men looked like dead rabbits, blank, numb, expressionless. That is what war has already done. Before the first shot has even been fired near you, you spend around 10 more days in training. But training does not mean preparing you emotionally. No one explains what the trenches smell like. No one explains what artillery sounds like. No one explains what fear feels like when it becomes constant. They teach you how to march, how to carry your rifle, how to obey. That's all, then. You are sent forward, you move at night. Always at night, because moving in daylight makes you an easy target. Columns of men march in silence, boots sinking into wet ground. No one talks much. The closer you get to the front, the quieter everyone becomes, because every man knows what waits ahead. Eventually, you leave the road behind and enter the trench system. At first, these are communication trenches. Long, narrow trenches connecting the rear lines to the front. They are deep, about 7 feet. They zigzag constantly, not for convenience, for survival, if artillery lands nearby. The zigzag shape stops the blast from traveling straight through. Even the trench design tells you something. Everything here is built around death. These trenches stretch for miles, a maze of mud walls, duckboards, sandbags, and darkness to help men find their way. The army gives the trenches familiar names: Piccadilly, Oxford Street, and other names from home. At first it sounds comforting, a small reminder of England, but the truth is practical without names. Soldiers would get lost in the maze, and getting lost here can mean death. New arrivals are always assigned a guide, because if you try to navigate alone, you may never reach your position. The trenches twist endlessly, and every corner looks the same. Mud walls, wood supports, dark passageways. The war has become an underground city, and you are entering it blind. Then, you finally reach the front line trench. This is where everything changes. A soldier named Walter Hare remembered that moment for the rest of his life. The moment he stepped into the front line, he sank knee-deep into mud before taking 3 steps. Shells exploded nearby. Machine guns rattled, rifles cracked across the darkness, noise from every direction, mud everywhere, chaos everywhere. And his first thought was simple: I shan't be here 5 minutes. That was the honest reaction of a man seeing the front for the first time. No bravery, no heroic excitement, just the sudden realization that survival feels impossible. And the terrifying thing is, his fear was rational, because the Western Front killed about 6,000 soldiers every single day. Every day. Not only during major battles, not only during attacks, every single day. The trench itself kills, the artillery kills, the snipers kill, disease kills, mud kills, and random chance kills. War here is not an event, it is an environment. As you stand in the trench for the first time, You begin to understand that this place is not a battlefield in the normal sense. It is a machine built to consume men. The mud walls around you are scarred by explosions. The wooden supports shake from distant shell fire. The air smells of wet earth, smoke, sweat, and decay. Every face you see looks exhausted. Every movement feels heavy. No one here looks like victory. No one here talks about glory. They talk about surviving the night. That is all. And then, as the darkness settles over the trench, you realize something no one told you back home. The enemy is not just the men in the trench opposite you. The enemy is the trench itself. The cold, the mud, the fear, the waiting, the endless knowledge that at any moment, without warning, a shell may land, and your war will end before it has truly begun. And this is only your arrival. You have not fought yet. You have not been attacked yet. You have not seen the worst yet. But already, the war has begun to strip away everything familiar. Comfort, certainty, safety, and the illusion that courage alone can save you. Because your first lesson on the Western Front is simple. You are not entering a battle. You are entering a system designed to break you. By the time the first harsh light of morning fully settles over the trench, the illusion of survival has already begun to crack. What felt like a single terrifying moment slowly stretches into something much worse. A realization that this is not a battle you fight once, but a condition you live inside. After the morning firing dies down, the trench does not become peaceful. It becomes tense, unnaturally tense. The kind of silence where every small sound feels dangerous, a loose boot scraping mud, a cough. Even breathing too loudly feels like a mistake. You're told to stay low, always low, because somewhere out there, beyond the sandbags and broken earth, a sniper is waiting, watching, patient. You don't see him, you never will. But he sees you, and the only rule that matters now is simple: do not raise your head above the parapet. Men who forget this rule don't get warnings. They disappear. One second they are there, the next second they collapse without a word, as if someone quietly switched them off. No drama, no final speech, just gone. So instead of looking, you use a periscope, a crude mirror device that lets you see over the edge without exposing yourself. Even that feels unsafe, because here, safety is never real. It's just temporary luck. As the hours pass, exhaustion begins to settle into your body. Not the normal kind, not the kind sleep fixes. This is something heavier. A mix of fear, cold, hunger, and constant alertness that slowly drains everything from you. You try to rest, but rest in a trench isn't rest. It's lying in mud, surrounded by noise, waiting for the next shock. And then you feel it, something moving. At first, you think it's just the mud shifting beneath you. But then it moves again, faster this time. You look down. A rat. Not a small one, not the kind you're used to. This thing is large, well-fed, and completely unafraid of you, because it has learned something important. You are not the dominant creature here. It runs across your leg like you're part of the ground. Another follows, then another. They don't hesitate, they don't scatter, they live here. And worse, they thrive here. These rats feed on whatever they can find, scraps of food, waste, and sometimes bodies. Bodies that were never buried properly. Bodies that still lie somewhere out in no man's land, slowly becoming part of the same environment you're now trapped in. The realization hits you slowly. This place is not temporary. It's not just a battlefield. It's an ecosystem, and you are now part of it. If the rats don't get to you mentally, the lice will. You feel the itching first. A small irritation under your clothes. Easy to ignore, but within hours it spreads. Your neck, your chest, your waist, you scratch. It doesn't help. Because this isn't dirt. It's infestation. Nearly every soldier here carries lice. They live in the seams of your clothing, multiplying faster than you can remove them. Men sit together during quiet moments, picking them out, crushing them between fingernails. They even gave it a name. Chatting. A casual word for something deeply unpleasant. Some try burning them out with candles, running flames along the seams of their uniforms. You hear the faint popping sounds as they die. But it doesn't solve anything. They always come back. And worse than the itching is what they bring with them: disease. Trench fever spreads quietly. No dramatic symptoms at first, just weakness, headaches, fever. But once it hits, it pulls men out of the line for weeks, sometimes months. If they're lucky, if not, they stay here, getting weaker in the same place that made them sick. By midday, your body is already failing in ways you didn't expect. Your feet, especially. You've been standing in cold mud for hours, maybe longer. At first, it just feels uncomfortable. Then numb, then nothing. That's when it becomes dangerous. Trench foot doesn't start with pain, it starts with silence. Your feet swell. Skin softens, circulation fails. You can't feel them properly anymore, but inside, damage is already happening. And when feeling finally returns, it doesn't return gently. It comes back as pain so intense it feels unreal. Men have described it as worse than wounds. Because wounds happen fast, this happens slowly, and you can't escape it. The army tries to prevent it, oiling feet, changing socks, inspections. But prevention only works if conditions allow it, and conditions rarely do. Because everything here is working against you. The mud, the cold, the water, the constant standing, even your own body becomes a liability. By afternoon, you're assigned work. There's no break from it, repairing trench walls, filling sandbags, draining water that keeps coming back no matter how much you remove. It's repetitive, physical, endless, and always under threat, because even while working, you are exposed. A shell could land, a sniper could fire. A random piece of metal could end everything without warning. This is when you begin to understand the real nature of the war. It's not constant action, it's constant risk. Hours pass with nothing happening, and then everything happens in a second. That unpredictability is what breaks people, not just physically, mentally, because your mind starts searching for patterns, for control, for some way to predict what comes next. But there is no pattern, no control, only waiting. And slowly that waiting becomes the hardest part of all. Because deep down, you begin to realize something you weren't told when you arrived. This isn't about surviving one battle. It's about surviving time itself. And time here is not on your side. By the time evening approaches, your body is already exhausted beyond anything you have known before. But strangely, this is not when the day ends. This is when the real danger begins. As the light fades, a new tension settles over the trench. Orders start moving quietly from man to man. Equipment is checked again, rifles cleaned, bayonets fixed. Because just like dawn, dusk is another moment when attacks are most likely. You hear the command again, stand to. Once more you climb onto the fire step, your boots heavy with mud, your hands stiff around your rifle. The light is fading fast, and everything in front of you becomes a blur of shadows. This is the moment where fear feels closest, because you can't see clearly, but neither can the enemy, and that means both sides are guessing and shooting. For the next hour, you stare into the darkness of no man's land. Every shape looks like movement, every movement looks like an attack. Your mind starts playing tricks. A broken tree stump becomes a soldier, a shadow becomes a charge. You grip your weapon tighter, trying to stay ready even as your body begs for rest. Then suddenly, gunfire, not aimed, not precise, just a wave of noise tearing through the silence. This is the evening hate. Just like in the morning, both sides fire blindly into the darkness, trying to make sure no one is creeping closer. Bullets crack overhead. Machine guns rattle. Sometimes artillery joins in. You don't aim, you just fire. Because everyone else is firing, and because doing nothing feels more dangerous than doing something. Eventually, the noise fades. Darkness fully takes over, and that's when the war changes shape, because night in the trench is not for sleeping. It's for working. You are assigned your role. Maybe you're part of a wiring party, crawling out into no man's land to repair or lay barbed wire. Maybe you're carrying rations through the communication trenches. Maybe you're sent on patrol. Whatever the task, one thing is certain. You are leaving the relative safety of the trench and stepping into the open. No man's land looks different at night. Worse, the ground is uneven, torn apart by shell craters. Water fills the holes deep enough to drown in if you fall the wrong way. The remains of barbed wire stretch across the landscape like traps waiting to catch you. And then there are the bodies. Some fresh, some not. You try not to look at them. But you can't avoid them completely. They're part of the terrain now. A silent reminder of what happens here. You move slowly, carefully, every step matters, because even in darkness you are not invisible. Flares suddenly shoot into the sky, turning night into blinding white light. For a few seconds everything is visible, including you. You freeze, don't move, because movement draws attention. Machine guns begin scanning the ground, searching for anything out of place. Your heart pounds so loudly it feels like it should give you away. But then the light fades, darkness returns, and you move again. This continues for hours. Slow movement, sudden light, freezing, waiting, moving again. If you're unlucky, you're assigned to a trench raid. This is not a large battle. It's something far more personal. Small groups of soldiers cross into enemy trenches under cover of darkness. The objective is simple: gather information, capture prisoners, and kill if necessary. But if necessary quickly becomes inevitable, because once you are inside the enemy trench, everything happens fast. There is no distance, no time. No space to think. You hear voices, footsteps. Someone turns a corner. And suddenly you are face to face with another man who is just as terrified as you are. What follows is not heroic, it's not cinematic, it's brutal: clubs, knives. Bare hands, fighting at a distance so close you can see the fear in each other's eyes. There are no speeches, no strategy, just instinct. Survive or don't. And when it's over, you don't celebrate, you don't even process what happened. You just leave quickly, back into the darkness, back to your trench, back to waiting, because even after something like that, the night isn't over. If you're not on a mission, you're on sentry duty, 2-hour shifts, standing guard. Watching the darkness, trying to stay awake. Because falling asleep here isn't just dangerous, it's punishable by death, not often carried out, but the threat is real enough, so you force yourself to stay awake, even as your eyes close. Even as your body shuts down, because the cost of failure is too high. Time loses meaning during these hours. Minutes feel like hours feel like days, and the night stretches on endlessly. At some point, the cold becomes unbearable. Your wet clothes cling to your skin. The dampness seeps into your bones. You can't get warm. No matter what you do, you try to shift position. It doesn't help. You try to stay still. That doesn't help either, because comfort doesn't exist here. Only endurance. And slowly something begins to change inside you, not physically, mentally. The constant fear, the lack of sleep, the endless tension, it starts to wear you down. Your thoughts become slower, heavier. You stop reacting the way you did before. Things that should shock you don't. Things that should scare you barely register. This isn't strength. It's the beginning of something else. Something quieter, more dangerous, because it means you're adapting. Not to survive, but to endure. And as the night drags on, one realization becomes impossible to ignore. You are no longer the same person who arrived here, and this is only your first day. By the time the night begins to fade, you are no longer running on strength or even fear. You are running on instinct. Somewhere between the darkness and the cold, between the waiting and the work, your body has stopped asking questions. It just moves, responds, endures. And then, just as suddenly as it disappeared, the light begins to return. Dawn. Again, you hear it before you fully register it, the same order as yesterday. Stand to. No matter how exhausted you are, no matter how little sleep you got, it doesn't matter. Every man climbs back onto the fire step. Rifle ready, bayonet fixed, because this moment is always dangerous. Your muscles protest as you move. Your eyes burn from lack of sleep. Your hands shake slightly as you grip your weapon, but you still stand, because everyone stands, and because not standing isn't an option. You stare out into no man's land again. The same broken ground, the same scattered shapes, the same silence that feels like it could break at any second. And for a moment, nothing happens, no attack, no charge, just stillness. But that stillness doesn't bring relief. It brings something worse: expectation. Because you know now that violence here doesn't follow rules, it doesn't build up, it doesn't warn you, it just arrives. And when it does, you won't be ready. After stand 2, the now familiar routine begins again. Random gunfire, the morning hate. Bullets fired into empty space just in case someone is there. You fire too, not because you see anything, but because that's what everyone does. Then it ends, and the day begins again, but something has changed. Not around you, inside you. Yesterday, everything felt shocking, overwhelming, unreal. Today, it feels expected. The mud doesn't surprise you anymore. The rats don't shock you. The lice don't disgust you the same way. Even the constant danger, the snipers, the shells, the fear, starts to feel normal. And that is when the war truly takes hold. Because this is how it wins, not by killing you instantly, but by changing what you accept, by making the unbearable feel routine. As the day progresses, the real killer of this war begins to reveal itself more clearly. Not bullets, not even close combat, artillery. You hear it before you understand it. A distant boom, then another, then many. At first it sounds far away, manageable, then the sound changes, closer, sharper, and then impact. The ground shakes violently beneath you. Dirt flies into the air. The trench walls tremble. Another explosion, closer, louder. There is no pattern, no rhythm you can follow, just chaos. Shells begin falling around you, each one capable of ending everything instantly. You don't see where they land until it's too late. You don't know if the next one is meant for you. You can't fight back. You can't run. All you can do is stay where you are and hope. Hope that the next explosion isn't yours. This is what makes artillery different. It doesn't feel like combat. It feels like waiting to be chosen. Men press themselves against trench walls, crouch low, cover their heads, not because it will save them, but because it feels like doing something. Anything, the noise becomes overwhelming, constant, Relentless, you can't hear your own thoughts, you can't think clearly, time disappears again, minutes stretch, explosions blur together, and somewhere in that chaos something breaks, not your body. Your mind, because this kind of fear isn't sharp and fast, it's heavy, endless, and your brain isn't built to carry it forever. This is where men begin to change in ways no one prepared them for. Hands start shaking uncontrollably. Voices crack. Some men go silent, completely silent, staring at nothing. Others laugh, not because anything is funny, but because something inside them has snapped. This is what they will later call shell shock. But here, in this moment, it doesn't have a name. It's just happening. And you feel it too, maybe not fully, not yet, but something is shifting. Your reactions are slower. Your emotions feel distant. Like there's a layer between you and everything else. You're still here, but not completely. And the worst part? The shelling doesn't need to hit you directly to affect you. It just needs to keep happening, over and over and over. Because eventually something gives, even if your body survives. As the barrage fades, a strange silence follows, not peaceful, empty, like the world is catching its breath. You look around. The trench is damaged, mud collapsed in places. Sandbags torn apart. Maybe someone is missing, maybe more than one. No one reacts dramatically. No one shouts, because this is expected. Work begins immediately. Repair the damage, rebuild the walls, restore what was lost. Because it will happen again. And everything must be ready, always ready. That's the rule here. There is no after. No safe moment to relax, just a cycle. Damage, repair, wait, repeat. And as you go through it, one thought slowly becomes impossible to ignore. You survived the first day, but survival doesn't feel like victory. It feels like a sentence. Because now you understand something you didn't before. This isn't a place you escape quickly. It's a place you return to, again, and again, and again. And tomorrow will not be better. By the time your first full 24 hours come to an end, you are no longer measuring time the way you used to. You're not thinking in hours, you're thinking in survival, one moment at a time. One task at a time, one breath at a time, because that is all this place allows. Somewhere deep in the back of your mind, a quiet realization begins to form. This isn't temporary, this isn't something you endure once and leave behind. This is a cycle, a system, and you are now part of it. The trench you stand in is not just a position on a map. It's a repeating pattern of life, if you can still call it that. 4 days here, then maybe a few days behind the line, then back again, and again, and again, not for weeks, for months, for years. And each time you return, you bring less of yourself with you. At first, you notice small changes. You stop reacting to the smell. That constant mix of mud, decay, smoke, and damp clothing that once made your stomach turn now barely registers. You stop noticing the rats. You stop caring about the lice. You stop questioning the food, cold meat, hard biscuits, bitter tea. It's no longer something to complain about. It's just what exists. And then the deeper changes begin. The ones you don't notice right away. You stop thinking about home as something real. It becomes distant, abstract, like a memory from another life. You stop imagining the future. Because imagining anything beyond the next few days feels pointless. And slowly, you stop feeling things the way you used to, not completely, but enough to change you. Fear doesn't disappear, it dulls. Grief doesn't vanish, it compresses. You see men disappear, sometimes suddenly, sometimes slowly. And each time it affects you a little less, not because you don't care, but because you can't afford to care the same way. This is how the war reshapes you, not all at once, but piece by piece. Until one day you realize something unsettling. You have adapted. You can stand in mud for hours without thinking about it. You can hear gunfire and not flinch the same way. You can sleep somehow in the middle of chaos. You can function in a place that once felt impossible, and that adaptation feels like survival. But it comes at a cost, because the person who could not survive here is gone, and the person who can is someone else. This is what many soldiers never found the words to explain. The war didn't just kill people, it changed the ones who lived, even when the fighting stopped, even when they went home. Something stayed behind, or maybe something stayed here, in the trenches, in the mud, in the endless cycle of waiting and surviving. Numbers try to explain it. Millions dead, millions wounded, thousands lost every single day. But numbers don't capture this part, the slow erosion, the mental weight, the invisible damage, because this war was not fast, it was not clean, it did not end things quickly. It stretched them out, day after day, month after month, until survival itself became exhausting. And that's the part no one tells you at the beginning, not the posters, not the speeches, not the promises of glory. They don't tell you that the hardest part isn't your first day. It's your second. And your third, and every day after that. Because once you understand what this place really is, you also understand something else. There is no plan to make it better, no clear end. No escape waiting just ahead, only the same routine. The same danger, the same slow wearing down of everything you are. This is why men began to lose something deeper than strength. They lost certainty. They lost belief. They lost the idea that any of this had meaning. Some stopped talking about victory. Others stopped talking altogether, and yet, every morning they still climbed onto the fire step. Every night they still went out into the dark. Every day they still did what was asked of them, not because they believed in it, but because there was nothing else to do. That is what your first 24 hours truly teach you. Not how to fight, not how to win, but how to endure. And once you learn that lesson, you can never fully unlearn it. Because somewhere inside you it stays, a quiet understanding that the worst part of this war was never the beginning. It was the fact that it didn't. The worst part of this war was never the beginning. It was the fact that it didn't.